Alright, so jumping straight into today's video. Afterdream has all of the initial aesthetics of a small budget psychological horror game. The environment, from the sounds, the art, and the music is all wonderfully done. The art style and presentation immediately remind me of Lone Survivor. The game takes you through a side-scrolling pixel art world void of complex controls. There's no combat in the game. For this style of game, I thought it felt good. That's not to say there aren't antagonistic forces in the game, just that you don't deal with them by beating them up. The core loop of the game is essentially just a point-and-click exploration game without the point-and-click. By that I mean you walk around, you pick up objects, and find where they belong with your keyboard, and only your keyboard. The game lacks depth in this regard, if you can call it that. You only hold on to a few items at once, and at several points only one at a time. This introduces some very simple decision making, however that doesn't bother me. The defining gameplay mechanic has you taking pictures with a camera that allows you to show things as they once were. This is typically used to unlock new areas or find items in addition to a few other uses. The camera also has a flash that's used to light up areas, but this is seldom a requirement for navigating areas, as you will get a prompt to interact with items or areas as you walk past them. I feel like the camera serves its purpose, but nothing more than that, no real excitement. Initially I thought maybe you could find a fun way to let people explore with the mechanic, in the sense that maybe each area has sort of like two layers in the world, letting them take a picture of an area to revert the area. I'm ultimately not sure if you would gain a whole lot while also risking boring players with less obvious objectives when using the camera. With such limited controls in the game, there are very few areas for issues to arise. In most regards, the game controls well and is fun to play. However, each area does feature a few puzzles or mini-games. One of those includes a chisel. This little puzzle would have felt much better if there was mouse support. However, there's not. Because of that, whenever you press E, you automatically jump to the next piece. I was able to mash E until it was done. While it wasn't anti-fun, it did lack enjoyment. Because there was no joy, I feel like the idea should be reworked or simplified. Looking at it afterwards, I almost struggled to call this game a horror game. It doesn't seem to set out to scare, but instead to have a story that revolves around characters, grief, guilt, and emotional exploration. All of that exploration is undoubtedly in a setting filled to the brim with thematically horror set pieces. However, unlike many other horror games, this game has a much more satisfying end, even if it doesn't necessarily feel like the story was drawn to a solid conclusion. Reaching that conclusion, you're introduced to a plethora of characters. Those characters have varying backgrounds and small, sometimes seemingly insignificant lines of dialogue that suggest or tell a story that seems more meaningful. Speaking of dialogue, I did find some of the early dialogue to seem odd. While overall the narrative was good, some of the reactionary text seemed subpar. While in a lot of horror games the world seems set out to push you down with little else but yourself to pull you up, here however, the stories on the side as you reach your main goal revolve around characters that come together in positive ways. Sometimes this is you helping a creature that has lost itself or simply needs help. Other times it's those characters helping you. As far as technical concerns, the big thing to note is the seizure warning. There is a reduced flashing toggle in the settings, which I'm happy is included. I'm not someone who typically struggles with light sensitivity or flashing, but this game was giving me a headache only a few minutes in. Other than that, I had no issues with the game. It performed well, and I didn't run into any weird issues with the game as I played through it. To summarize, Afterdream is a great game about people, grief, guilt, and much more that happens to be built out in a horror setting. The game is relatively short, having taken me only 2.5 hours to complete. I think the game manages to do what it set out to do within that time and doesn't overstay its welcome in any regard. Overall, I highly recommend the game. I think this would be a great game for people that want a game that delivers a good story and are okay with some light horror themes. Even if horror isn't something you usually vibe with, this may be worth taking a look. That said, if you are 100% opposed to horror, there are still likely going to be things that you won't want to touch here. As always, thanks so much for watching. Bye!